This is a world that has been inflicted with the error 437. How did this happen? And is this glitch coming for you next? Find out as we explore the story of error 437. So, our story begins long ago in a parallel world. And this world was once a very peaceful place. In fact, it was very reminiscent of the old peaceful days of the overworld. Back when villagers roamed the world, massive mountains laid untouched, and the Steve was just there trying to improve the world. So it was once a very nice place. Well, that was if you didn't look too closely. As you see, this world was actually the secret testing site for the great spirits of the Minecraft world. And so they created this world, World 437, to practice creating new life and to improve the quality of their other worlds. And so as over time the spirits were creating more and more new worlds, they used World 437 more and more for those tests. And so it became a very useful place for them, and they spent a lot of time there. Also, the inhabitants of that world had no idea that their world was merely just a testing site for some powerful gods to play around in. Now, that may sound slightly dangerous, but in reality, this world was one of the safest in the entire Minecraft universe, as the spirits took great care in maintaining their testing world. Well, they did, until one winter morning when everything changed. On that morning, the spirits were trying to create an AI of sorts that they could use to automate the creation and preservation of new worlds. However, many of them soon had visions of the AI corrupting and going off to create new worlds that weren't intended, and that this AI would soon turn sentient and become a greedy force of power and evil. Now, they did not want that, and so they went to kill this AI that they had just made. But it was too late. It had already infused itself into the ground, and the AI began its quest for destruction. So the spirits, not wanting to risk this AI spreading to other worlds, they abandoned World 437 and moved to a new world. Also, as they did that, they cut off all connections that World 437 had to any other worlds, thus isolating the AI. They could not risk the AI spreading. So now World 437 was left with an evil AI in the ground gaining power, and they had no godly guardians. So what happened next in World 437? Well, actually, at first, everything was just fine. The villagers kept on farming, the skeletons kept on spawning, the pillagers kept on raiding, and the Steve continued on building his impressive monuments. But very quickly, things began to change. At first, there seemed to be just a few minor glitches. Time suddenly being set to day, or a cow suddenly just levitating away. And at first, all the villagers and pillagers thought that the great gods would fix these issues, like they always used to. But they didn't, as they had left permanently. And so, without the watchful eye of the spirits, much larger glitches began occurring, such as worldwide quakes and the colour loss of the world. All of these were very strange and concerning, and so soon, when they all realised that no one was coming to save them anymore, they elected a new leader, and they decided on the Steve. After all, he was the most powerful being in this world that they knew of. And the Steve at first was very good at his job. He kept the villagers feeling safe and would always go to investigate any strange glitches. And soon he was even able to fix some of these glitches, and the world looked like it may even have a bright future, even without their great deities. But that would all come crushing down in just a matter of minutes. Remember that AI, the one that the spirits had left here as it was scared of it? Well, it had infused itself into the ground, and it was actually the one causing all of these strange occurrences. And it was doing all of that to collect data on the mobs of this world, to see how they would react. And now, with all the data that it had been able to collect, it was finally able to unleash its most powerful attack. he rose to the surface of the world and took control of the world's leader, Steve, and then it sent shockwaves of corruption all across the world. Now, having the most powerful being in the world as its physical form, the AI became unstoppable. And so now the entire world was under the control of this errand AI, and so it became known as the Error 437. Now, luckily this world was cut off from all others, and as such, this error could not corrupt other worlds, but that would only be the case temporarily, as eventually the spirits were bound to make a mistake and accidentally have a linked world collide with this one. It was just a matter of time, and so now the error world lays dormant, waiting to collide and corrupt every other world. It just needed to wait. Millions of years later, in a completely different world, there is another Steve, who, while somehow messing around with some internal code of his world, accidentally opened a portal. He knew he probably shouldn't go in. He didn't have anything to defend himself with if there was a threat on the other side. But soon, curiosity got the better of him, and he decided to enter. When he arrived, nothing looked too out of the ordinary. In fact, it looked rather like his home world, and so he didn't suspect that anything was wrong here, nor did he run back through the portal before it disappeared. But since everything looked so similar to his home world, the Steve knew that he should probably make some preparations for night, as the zombies would rise, and he was in no place to fight them right now. And so he cut down a tree, killed a few sheep that were for some reason staying still, weird, and made a bed so that he could skip the night. But now it was noon, and so he decided to do some exploring. But while exploring, he comes across a parrot that, just like the sheep, was frozen in place in the air. Very strange. And so the Steve starts to think that maybe this jungle was haunted or something, and so he decides to leave it, and he ends up in a Badlands. And again, he sees something that just doesn't make any sense. Floating cacti. Something was probably wrong here, but the Steve had no other choice but to walk on, as there was nothing he could do right now, as his portal had disappeared. But he did plan to create a new one in the morning, as nightfall was now approaching. And so now, with the bed that he had prepared earlier, he goes to sleep. Except when he does that, the bed explodes and the Steve dies. Well, not quite, as he just respawns just where he died. That was not normal. There was definitely something wrong here, and Steve needed to get out. But for now, he just had to survive the night. The zombies would start spawning soon, and he had no defense against them. And that's when he saw a village in the distance. And so he ran to it, knowing that they'd probably be a safe place here, as they are in his home world. That was his biggest mistake. So, as soon as he arrived at that village, he ran into the first house he saw and hid in the corner. He was scared, even though he really shouldn't have been, as all those evil mobs that spawn at night spawned frozen again. Regardless, he waited until the morning, and then he left that house. When he does, he spends the first part of his day exploring the village, and again, something just felt off here. He didn't quite know what just yet. But to take his mind off all this, he set himself a new goal, and that was finding some food, as he was quite hungry. But he did that quite quickly, as there was a food farm with carrots in the village, and so he ran over to it and leant down to grab a carrot. But when he pulled it out of the ground, an iron trapdoor came out. Steve realized at that moment that there was definitely something messed up with this world, and that he needs to get out right now. But before he could do that, the AI finally reveals the true horrors of the Error 437 world. Everything that Steve had seen up until this point had been a hoax. That's why everything seemed so off, and the true world was terrifying. But before he could think of what to do, the physical form of Error 437 spawned right next to him. Help me, help me, help me, help me, help me, help me, help me. The Steve couldn't move himself. He was stuck, and he was forcefully dragged into a lava pit. But was he safe now, since he could just respawn and go free, as the thing that wanted him dead had him killed? No. Help me, help me, help me, help me, help me, help me, help me. The Steve was in an endless cycle of death, always hearing the cries from the trapped Steve from this once beautiful world. The AI controls this errant world, and there is nothing that you can do to stop that. And so the Steve had no other choice but to delete the world. Except the code of this evil AI lives on. And to find out what it does next, watch this video.